the arena of broken bones. The crowd roared like wild beasts. Zilari had never heard such a terrible sound before. The arena was alive with noise, thousands of aliens shouting, cheering, screaming for blood. She stood in the medical bay above the combat floor, her heart pounding. This was her first time seeing a real fight. Her people called it entertainment. But to her, it felt wrong. Below, two fighters were dragged into the ring by armored guards. One was a tall, horned alien from the battle planet Chernak, covered in scars, thick muscles, and war paint. The other was a human. Zilari blinked in confusion. She had read about humans, soft-skinned, weak creatures from a low-tech world. But the one standing below didn't look weak. He looked dangerous. He was covered in dirt and blood. One of his arms hung limp. His leg was twisted badly and his lip was split open. Yet he stood tall. He smiled. He laughed. The sound was strange in the air, deep and full of madness. Zilari turned to the alien surgeon beside her. Why is he laughing? His bones are broken. The surgeon shrugged. Humans are strange. They don't break the same way we do. Zilari leaned forward. Her eyes locked onto the human. His name, she had learned earlier, was Jace. Jace looked up at the crowd, raised his broken arm slowly, and then with a sharp, sickening crack, snapped it back into place. The crowd went silent for a second. Zilari gasped. Then chaos. The crowd exploded in screams and applause. Jace rolled his shoulder, wincing slightly, and gave a thumbs up to the sky camera. His smile never faded. Zilari felt a chill run through her. The horned alien charged. Dust flew from the arena floor as it rushed like a four-legged beast. But Jace didn't run. He didn't move until the last second. He sidestepped and punched, not with power, but with precision. His fist landed on the alien's eye. The alien howled and swung back, knocking Jace across the floor. He tumbled hard, but when he stood up, he was laughing again. What kind of creature was this? The fight continued for nearly 5 minutes. Bones cracked. Blood flew. But Jace never gave up. He fought like pain didn't matter, like his broken body didn't belong to him. He moved with the strength of a wild storm. Zilari had never seen anything like it. Then, the final blow. The horned alien raised its giant fist to crush Jace. But Jace ducked, grabbed a loose metal shard from the ground and drove it into the alien's chest. The creature froze, then dropped. The entire arena fell silent again. Jace stood over the body, covered in sweat, blood, and dirt. His breathing was heavy. His shoulder was out again. He walked slowly to the edge of the ring and stared up. He stared directly at Zilari, their eyes locked. She didn't know why, but she couldn't look away. Then, in a voice just loud enough for the mic to catch, Jace said, "You next?" Zilari stepped back from the glass. The surgeon laughed. He's got a death wish. But Zilari wasn't sure. She whispered to herself, "No, he wants us to see something. But what?" Later that night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing his face. That smile. Those eyes full of fire. The way he snapped his bones without fear. Were all humans like that? Or was this one different? She looked up the human's history file. Prisoner 451J. Jace Renner. Former soldier. Captured during a failed invasion. Refused to speak during questioning. Survived 6 interrogation rounds. Refused food for 3 days. Broke his own finger to escape handcuffs. Laughed during the entire trial. Zilari sat back in her chair, shocked. Her species had always believed humans were primitive, emotionally unstable, easy to control. But this one wasn't easy. He was terrifying. And somehow, fascinating. She closed the file. Tomorrow he would fight again, and she knew she'd be watching, because something inside her had changed. This human wasn't just another fighter. He was a message, and Zilari wanted to understand it. Zilari couldn't forget his eyes. All night she stared at her screen, replaying the fight. She paused again and again on the moment Jace snapped his bone back into place, laughing like pain was nothing. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from curiosity. What kind of being enjoys pain? What kind of creature looks death in the face and smiles? By the next morning, she made a choice. She had to speak to him, not as a medic, not as a scientist, as someone who wanted to know. The guard outside Jace's holding cell narrowed his red eyes as Xilari approached. You again? I'm a medical trainee, she said quickly. I was told to check on the human's condition. Funny, the guard growled. Didn't think broken bones healed overnight. She tried not to flinch. Just a routine check. After a long pause, the guard unlocked the door and waved her in. Be careful, he might bite. Inside the dim cell, the air smelled of sweat and blood. Chains rattled softly. Jace sat on the floor, shirtless, arms wrapped in crude bandages. His back was against the wall. He didn't look up. Xilari stepped forward slowly. You're hurt. Still breathing, Jace muttered. So not really. She blinked. His tone was calm, like he wasn't in a cage at all. You should be unconscious, she said. You lost more than a liter of blood. He finally looked at her and smiled. Guess I forgot to die, he said. Xilari didn't smile back. That's not normal. He shrugged. Neither is fighting space lions. With a dislocated shoulder, she studied his body. Purple bruises, cracked ribs, split knuckles. His heart rate, still steady. You should be screaming in pain, she whispered. Pain. He chuckled. Pain's just your brain overreacting. That's not how it works, she snapped. Pain is your body warning you something is wrong. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. Then maybe your body never had to survive a burning house, a falling ship, or a mine explosion. She froze. You think I'm some beast because I laugh at pain, he continued. But on Earth, we train with it. We fight through it. Pain doesn't own us. We own it. Xilari didn't know what to say. Her people ran from pain. Sedatives, healing pods, nerve dampeners, everything to stay comfortable. You broke your own arm, she said slowly. Why? Jace smiled again. Because if I didn't, the collar would have fried my brain. I had 2 seconds. I chose the break. She stared at him. You chose the pain? He nodded. Sometimes pain is freedom. Xilari felt a chill run down her back. She sat down on the floor outside his cell bars. She had no more words. Just questions in her mind. Silence filled the space between them. After a while, Jace spoke again. Why are you really here? I don't know, she said truthfully. I watched you fight yesterday. I've never seen anything like it. My people, we study biology. Pain is something to erase. Sounds boring. Jace grinned. She tilted her head. You think hurting is fun? No, he said. But beating the thing that hurts you? That's fun. Xilari finally smiled. You sound insane. Good. That means I'm still human. Just then the lights in the hallway blinked. A soft alarm rang, feeding time. Xilari stood to leave. But as she turned, Jace called out, Hey! She looked back. He held up his bruised hand and wiggled his fingers. Thanks for not screaming. She frowned. Why would I scream? You're the first alien who didn't. Look at me like a monster, he said softly. For a moment, Xilari forgot where she was. Then the guard's voice echoed. Time's up! Xilari nodded and walked away. But her mind stayed behind. That night, Xilari opened a secret medical archive. She searched for everything on human biology, nerves, adrenaline, shock response. What she found terrified her. Humans didn't just survive pain, they adapted to it. The worse the damage, the more their bodies fought back. She found reports of soldiers walking on broken legs, mothers lifting heavy metal to save children, miners pulling out their own teeth with pliers. Impossible, she whispered. This is not evolution. This is defiance. And yet, there it was. Again and again. She looked at Jace's file again, and a new word entered her thoughts. Not monster. Weapon. Xilari sat alone in the dark. All the lights in the medical wing were off, but her screen still glowed, showing file after file about Earth's brutal history. Floods, wars, famines, wild beasts, volcanoes, disease, and through all of it, humans survived. She didn't understand it before. Now it was becoming clear. Pain wasn't their weakness. It was their tool. The next morning, Xilari stood inside the control room of Arena Level 9. The screens displayed the next fight. Her hands shook slightly as she saw Jace's name again. This time the opponent was a Mordak brute, a creature 4 times Jace's size, bred only for killing. Why is he fighting again so soon? She asked the guard beside her. The guard smirked. The audience loves him, and pain doesn't matter. To him, right? Xilari didn't respond. Inside, she felt something twist. They weren't putting Jace in a match, they were feeding him to a beast. In the arena, Jace walked out slowly. His ribs were taped, and he limped on one leg. But he still wore that same crooked smile. The Mordak brute entered from the opposite gate, 12 feet tall, armored skin, and a jagged tail like a blade. The crowd went wild. Xilari clenched her fists. He can't win this time. But Jace raised one hand and laughed. The brute charged first. Jace ducked the tail swing, but not fast enough. The sharp edge slashed across his back. Blood sprayed. He stumbled, fell, rolled to his feet again. The brute struck again, smashing him into the wall. Jace collapsed. The crowd gasped, then went silent. Xilari's heart pounded. Get up. Get up. Then, slowly, Jace laughed again. With both hands, shaking, he grabbed a broken piece of stone and smashed his own dislocated knee back into place. Snap. The sound echoed across the arena. The crowd screamed in shock. Some cheered. Others covered their faces. Xilari's jaw dropped. How could he still move? Jace stood, blood dripping down his face, and shouted up at the crowd. You think that's pain? Try a human dentist. Even the brute seemed confused. Xilari slammed her fist on the desk. This isn't a fight. It's suicide. But the chief, commander beside her, leaned in. And yet he lives. Xilari looked at him, disgusted. You're using him to test fear. The commander grinned. No, we're using him to create it. Back in the arena, Jace charged. He ducked under the brute's claws, jumped on its back, and stabbed his sharp rock into the creature's neck. It roared in fury and slammed backward, crushing Jace against the wall. Jace didn't fall. He clung on. Blood ran from his mouth. But he didn't stop. With one last scream, he dug deeper. The brute dropped, and Jace fell with it. Silence. Then cheers. The crowd erupted. Xilari stared at the screen, tears in her eyes. This wasn't just survival. This was something else. Something more terrifying and more powerful. Hours later, in the medical chamber, Xilari stood over Jace's unconscious body. Machines beeped softly. His pulse was low. His breathing shallow. His body was broken in 10 different ways, but his mind... She remembered the look in his eyes, the fire, the wild joy, the defiance. She whispered to herself, how does a species like this even exist? Just then, Jace groaned. He opened one swollen eye and looked at her. Did we win? Xilari smiled sadly. You nearly died, he smirked. That's not a no. She shook her head. Why do you do this? Why don't you give up? His voice was hoarse. Because if I give up, I'm already dead. Xilari left his room, heart heavy. She knew what was coming. They weren't going to stop the fights. They were going to push him harder, because fear was a powerful weapon, and humans were experts in it. But Xilari had seen something else, something that scared her more than pain or war. Hope. And she knew Jace wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to change everything. Zilari stood at the edge of the restricted lab, her finger hovering over the access pad. This wasn't part of her training. This wasn't allowed. But Jace was dying, and she was done following rules written by those who had never looked a human in the eyes. Inside the lab, rows of forbidden tech lay hidden under security fields. Experimental medicines, rejected nanobots, illegal Earth data. Healing methods that her people had banned for being too unstable, or too human. Zilari entered the override code. One small beep, then silence. The door hissed open. She stepped inside. Back in the medbay, Jace's condition was dropping fast. His heart rate was uneven. One lung had collapsed. Bones in his neck were cracked. No alien would survive this. But Jace wasn't an alien, and Zilari had seen it. He kept living when logic said he should be dead. Still, even his body had limits. So, she returned with a small metallic vial glowing green. It was the only sample of type X9 regenerative nanocells, created to mimic human healing patterns, banned for being too unpredictable. Exactly what Jace needed. She knelt beside his bed. His eyes fluttered open. Barely. He looked at her through the pane. "You look worried. That's new." She smiled faintly. "I'm about to lose my medical license." He coughed blood. "Worth it." Zilari lifted the injector. "This was never tested." Jace chuckled. "Good, neither was I." And she pressed the needle in. The effect was instant. His body shuddered. His back arched. Veins glowed faint green. Machines blared warnings. Zilari panicked. "Stay with me, just hold on." Then, silence. A long pause, and Jace whispered, "Well, that tickled." Zilari almost collapsed with relief. His wounds started to close, slowly, but surely. Even the machines began to settle. He was stabilizing. She had done it. She had saved him. But then the alarm rang. Unauthorized tech detected. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Zilari turned to Jace. "You need to hide." Jace tried to sit up. "I can't move. I wasn't asking you." She grabbed him by the arm and dragged him toward the utility vent. The door burst open behind them. Guards shouted, "Step away from the human." Zilari threw a tray at the lights, smashing the room into darkness. She slipped into the vent, pulling Jace in with all her strength. Laser shots flew past. They didn't stop to look back. The crawl space was tight and filthy. Zilari's arms burned. Jace grunted, half-conscious. "You really care, huh?" She didn't answer. She just kept crawling. After what felt like hours, they reached the waste chute tunnel. She slid Jace down onto an old maintenance mattress. Then she collapsed beside him. Gasping, "What now?" he asked weakly. Zilari looked up through the small metal grate toward the arena lights above. "They'll label me a traitor," she whispered. "They'll come after us both." Jace smiled. "You'll be popular." Zilari didn't laugh. She stared at him for a long moment. "You've changed me," she said softly. "I used to believe everything my people taught me, that humans were unstable, that pain made you weak. But I saw your pain. I saw your fight. And now, I know," she whispered, "pain made you strong." That night, deep in the shadows of the arena's underbelly, Zilari bandaged Jace properly for the first time. No scanners, no bots. Just hands. She cleaned his wounds, fixed his fingers, stitched the skin around his jaw. He never complained. Not once. When she finished, he looked at her with tired eyes. "You should have left me." She shook her head. "And let them kill the first being who taught me what real strength looks like." Jace blinked. "That's kinda poetic." She smiled. "You inspire that." Footsteps echoed above. Search drones buzzed the corridors. Zilari and Jace remained quiet, hidden in the dark. And for the first time in her life, Zilari wasn't afraid. Because she was no longer just a medical trainee. She was the only alien who had touched the edge of human willpower and come back stronger. And Jace? He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was the symbol of a truth her people had tried to bury. Pain is not the end. It's the beginning. Xilari never touched a crime before, not even a broken protocol. But tonight she was about to steal for a human, a creature she had once called primitive. She stared at the sealed vault door. Behind it was the one thing that could save Jace's life. Her hand shook as she raised the override tool. "Forgive me, ancestors," she whispered, "but I won't let him die like an animal in a cage." 12 hours earlier, Jace had collapsed in the arena after his fight with the Mordak brute. He'd won, but at a cost. Internal bleeding, spine fracture, lung damage. His body was broken. Her people said to let him go. "Humans are disposable," said the chief physician. "Another will arrive soon enough." Xilari said nothing, but inside her something snapped, just like Jace's bones in that first fight. Back in her private lab, she reviewed his medical scan. Every system was failing, but his heart still beat. She remembered his words, "If I give up, I'm already dead." And she knew he wouldn't want mercy. He wanted a chance. That's when she thought of the vault. The vault was restricted to high-ranking military doctors. Inside was blacklisted alien tech, forbidden treatments that were considered unstable, and among them a sample of Project Redline, a healing serum based on human biology, once tested on battlefield soldiers before being banned for causing genetic shock. It was dangerous. It was illegal, but Jace was already dying. She typed in the stolen clearance code. Access granted. She held the vial in her hand, glowing deep crimson like human blood. Back in Jace's secret hiding place under the arena, the lights were dim and the air thick with dust. He lay still, his breathing shallow. When Xilari knelt beside him, he barely opened one eye. "They sent an angel?" "Hardly," she said. "I'm more of a criminal now." "Better than a nurse," he whispered, half smiling. She injected the serum into his neck. His body convulsed. His eyes snapped open. Blood ran from his nose. Xilari grabbed his shoulders. "Hold on. Please, just hold on." Jace's hands gripped hers, shaking violently. Then, silence. His chest rose slowly. His color returned. Xilari let out a long breath. He was stable. For now. She stayed with him for hours, and while he rested, she spoke softly to his unconscious form. "I thought pain made you broken," she said. "But now I see. It makes you whole." Her voice trembled. "I was trained to fix bodies, Jace, but no one taught me how to heal a soul." Suddenly, her wrist link buzzed. Security alert. Unauthorized vault breach. Xilari stood up fast. They had discovered the theft. She had only minutes. She shook Jace awake. "We need to move." "Where?" he groaned, still weak. "Somewhere they won't find us, somewhere dark." He looked at her and gave a faint grin. "You're getting good at this criminal thing." She helped him onto his feet. "Don't get used to it." They slipped through old servant tunnels beneath the arena, long forgotten by the officials above. Guards searched the upper floors. Drones scanned the halls, but Xilari knew the bones of this place. She had studied every level. They reached an abandoned chamber once used for creature storage, rusty cages, broken pipes. Silence. Xilari patched up Jace with whatever scraps she had. Old cloth, spare wire, her own cloak. He watched her work. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know." "Then why?" She paused and said simply, "Because the universe needs to know what you are." That night they hid in the dark. Jace drifted between sleep and pain. Xilari sat against the wall, alert. She had betrayed her oath, broken her laws, and stolen forbidden tech. And she would do it again. Because the monster they thought they threw into a cage was really a mirror. And when they looked into it, they saw something that terrified them. A human who wouldn't die. The arena roared again that morning, but this time, Jace wasn't in it. For the first time in 7 cycles, the cage doors stayed closed, and the crowd grew restless. They chanted his name, hungry for the humans, madness, his pain, his blood, his grin. But deep beneath the ground, far from the lights and cameras, Jace was finally free, and Zalari was a fugitive. In the dark underlevels of the city, where broken machines rusted and old systems whispered in sparks, Jace and Zalari built a hiding place. Not a home, just a place to breathe. Jace sat against a cracked wall, his body still healing, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. No more fights, he muttered. No more shows. Zalari looked up from the portable scanner she had stolen. They'll keep looking for you. They'll find me, Jace said with a smirk. But I won't be a gladiator when they do. What will you be? He looked at her with tired eyes. The last lesson they'll ever learn. Jace wasn't planning to escape. He was planning to end the system. He asked Zalari for every map, every security layout, every schedule. She hesitated. If we do this, they'll hunt us across the galaxy. Jace grinned. Let them try. Pain makes humans stronger, but you know what really makes us dangerous? She shook her head. Purpose. Over the next few days, Jace trained. Even with fractured ribs, he climbed old pipes and pushed through resistance. Zalari begged him to rest, but he laughed in her face. You think they're going to wait until I feel better? He fashioned weapons from scrap, metal rods, sharpened coils, even old drone parts. Zalari watched him with growing fear. Not fear of him, fear for him. Because the human she saved wasn't just surviving anymore. He was rising. One night, as they shared a stolen food pack, Jace asked, Why did you really help me? Zalari looked away. At first, curiosity. Then, shame. Shame. I watched my people cheer while you suffered. I did nothing. You were just a medic. I was a coward, she said quietly. Jace leaned forward. Zalari, courage isn't about swinging weapons. It's about choosing a side when it matters. She looked him in the eye. Then I choose yours. He nodded. Good, because I need your help. The next day, Zalari hacked into the arena's broadcast system. She found something horrifying. Hundreds of new human prisoners were scheduled to arrive soon. Some were soldiers, some were civilians. One file showed a boy, only 13 captured. During a skirmish near a mining colony, they were going to feed him to beasts for sport. Zalari clutched the screen, tears welling up. They're turning your kind into animals. Jace stood behind her. Then it's time to remind them who the real monsters are. Jace's plan was madness. Break into the control core, hijack the live arena feed, show the entire empire what they tried to hide, the cruelty, the fear, the truth. Zalari's voice shook. We could die, Jace shrugged. We were already supposed to. On the 7th night they moved, through service tunnels, past sensor nets, right into the beating heart of the arena. The broadcast tower stood like a spire of steel and light. Zalari accessed the main port. 30 seconds, she whispered. Jace looked into the camera. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't laughing. He looked into the eyes of 1 billion viewers across the stars and said, You called me a beast because I didn't cry. You cheered when I bled. You thought pain made me your toy, but pain taught me how to fight, and now, I'm teaching you. Security burst through the doors. Zalari hit the upload button. Jace picked up his weapons and smiled. Not because he wanted the fight, but because he was finally more than a gladiator. He was a symbol, a human who refused to break. The broadcast shook the stars, all across the empire, on warships, trade hubs, royal palaces, and distant colonies. Jace's face appeared. A bruised, bloodied human who stared into the camera and didn't flinch. Zalari watched the reaction from the shadows of the comms room. The system was still echoing with alerts. Red lights flashed, but it didn't matter. The message had gone out, and now the Empire was listening. Inside the arena control tower, panic spread like wildfire. This is treason, shouted the High Overseer. The alien traitor helped him, yelled another, but even their screams were buried beneath a growing wave of silence. Because many of the staff had also seen the truth on the screen. The cheering, the broken bones, the laughter, the horror. And they didn't know who the real monsters were anymore. Down in the old tunnels, Xelari patched up Jace's shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "They saw everything." Jace winced as she tightened the wrap. "No, I just showed them the mirror. Now we wait to see if they like what they saw." She looked up. "You think they'll change?" He shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll come to kill me." She paused. "What if they send more humans instead? What if they turn your kind into tools for fear?" Jace stared at her with tired eyes. "Then we don't hide anymore. We fight." Outside, the Empire's systems began to shift. Whispers moved through the ranks. Alien guards pausing before swinging their batons, merchants replaying the footage with shaking hands, young soldiers watching the humans scream and still rise. One word began to spread: unbreakable. And it wasn't just about Jace, it was about all humans. In the shadows of the city's underbelly, rebel messages flashed across old screens. Xelari read the codes. "We saw your broadcast. We didn't know. Help us make them stop." Jace smiled. "Looks like we started a fire." "Not just any fire," Xelari said. "A war." The Empire began searching harder. Wanted posters, death warrants, drone patrols doubled. But every time they tried to trace the source, it moved, because the whispers had grown teeth. Low-rank aliens began sabotaging their own systems. One smuggler leaked internal files of the arena's secret experiments. Another hacked prison logs, showing how many humans had died without names. The Empire panicked. They called it a virus. Jace called it a reckoning. Then came the real test. A high-security prison transport ship landed in the arena sector. Inside, 50 new human prisoners. Xelari scanned the list. "They're children," she said in horror. "Farmers, medics, mechanics." Jace clenched his fists. "They're not fighters. They will be fed to the crowds, one by one." He said nothing for a long time, then quietly asked, "Can you get me in?" Xelari's voice cracked. "Jace, if you walk in there, you might not walk back out." He looked at her. "That's not the point." The next night, Jace approached the guards dressed in a stolen tech handler uniform. Xelari stayed on the rooftop watching through hacked drone cams. The gates opened. He stepped inside the ship's loading bay and saw them, humans, thin, bruised, silent. One girl looked no older than 10. She stared at Jace, wide-eyed. "Are you the one who laughed at the beast?" Jace knelt down. "That was just Tuesday." She didn't laugh. She ran to him and hugged his waist, and Jace, who had laughed through broken bones, nearly broke down. He turned to the others. "Listen," he said. "You're not here to die. Not today. You've got people out there now. Aliens who saw the truth, rebels who want to help." "How?" asked one man. "They have guns, ships, power." Jace stood tall. "They have fear," he said. "And we have pain. And pain teaches us to fight smart. Pain makes us careful. Pain makes us mean." He paused. "Follow me, and I'll teach you what they never expected. How to survive like a human." Above, Xelari activated the escape plan. Doors unlocked, gates glitched, sirens howled. But this time, it wasn't just Jace running. It was an army. They expected a riot. They got a revolution. It started with one human who laughed through broken bones. It ended with a billion eyes watching their empire fall apart. One scream, one secret, one truth at a time. Jace stood atop the central arena gate as dawn rose over the city. Below him, thousands had gathered, aliens and humans alike. The sky was filled with stolen drones, all broadcasting live. And this time, the crowd wasn't there to see blood. They were there to hear the man who refused to break. Xilari stood behind him, her cloak torn, her eyes sharp. She had leaked the final recordings, footage of human prisoners begging for life, medical logs showing how pain was used as entertainment, and the truth about the arena's crimes. The files had reached every colony, every noble family, every corner of the empire. The silence that followed wasn't shock, it was shame. Jace stepped forward, no weapons, no armor, just scars, real ones. He looked at the cameras and spoke. They put me in a cage, they broke my bones, they called me a beast, but I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I laughed. Because every time they tried to make me less, I became more. The crowd was silent, not out of fear, but out of awakening. Behind the arena gates, guards formed up. Orders were clear. Kill him before the message spreads further. But something strange happened. The first guard dropped his weapon, then the second, then all of them. Because they had seen the footage too, and they remembered how he stood bleeding in the dirt, grinning like death was a joke. They remembered the sound of bones snapping, and laughter following it. He wasn't just a fighter, he was the proof that their system had failed. Then, from behind the crowds, a new sound rose. Clapping, one person, then 10, then hundreds, then thousands. A sound that shook the heart of the empire, not cheering for violence but for defiance. Xilari walked beside Jace and whispered, "It's over." "No," Jace said. "It's just starting." Over the next days, prisons were opened. Arena gates were dismantled. Alien rebels worked side by side with freed humans. Statues of the Grand Overseers were pulled down and replaced with a simple mark, a cracked chain wrapped around a human. Wrist Xilari watched children, human and alien, playing together where corpses once fell. And for the first time in her life, she believed in peace, because she had seen what pain could do when it was faced with courage instead of cruelty. One night, under the stars, she found Jace sitting on the edge of the arena ruins. He was quiet, still, for once. She sat beside him. "They'll tell stories about you," she said. He chuckled. "Let's hope they spell my name right." "You changed them." "No," he replied, looking out at the distant lights. "You did. You gave me a chance to stand." Xilari shook her head. "You snapped your bones back into place and laughed. I just watched." He looked at her, serious for once. "You broke something far more powerful than bones. You broke their silence." Then, slowly, he stood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same tiny arena ID tag he wore as a prisoner. He crushed it in his hand, dropped it into the dust, and walked away. No more chains, no more shows, no more cages. Jace Renner wasn't a gladiator anymore. He was the spark that burned a galaxy's shame into history, and when they tell the story of the human who laughed while snapping his bones, they'll remember what really cracked that day, the walls of their empire,